Welcome to the podcast, ladies and gentlemen. We're so glad you're here, and let's have a good time.
Now that's how you start a podcast. Chris is here today on the podcast. We're going to be talking about his voiceover talents. He works with Audible. If you've gone to Audible and you've listened to these great books, you're like, how does that happen? How does a book become an audiobook? Chris is here to uncover that for us. We're going to talk a little podcasting as well. And if you're looking for a great voiceover talent, Chris is here. So Chris, welcome to the podcast. I'm so glad to have you here.
Thank you, Dave. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's amazing. I love the voice. I love the voice, Chris. So have you had this voice the entire time, this beautiful, deep voice, or when you were a teenager, was it crackly like most of us?
I think it started out as just a normal kid voice, and then around the age of 16, I was ordering food at a Mexican restaurant with a couple of friends and their parents, and one of the moms was like, "You need to be on the radio," and I had never thought about it until then, and then I just kind of leaned into it. I mean, it's the best I can do with what I got nowadays.
So were you in radio for a period of time then, Chris?
Yes, FM radio. I did 4 years in that interesting industry from 2013 to about 2017.
Good. Awesome. And now you're voiceover talent. You're working with authors, and I've heard you on Audible, and on your website you have links to everything, which is great. But tell us a little bit, how did it get started for you then to go from radio to audio narration?
Everything I just kind of fell into.
Okay.
I left the radio business because it wasn't keeping the lights on. And radio seems like such a tough thing in 2024 with the advent of streaming and the internet. And I'm sure you know all about that. So the times are a-changing. And I didn't want to, I mean, I got this microphone, I got this computer. I didn't want to just give that up and put it in the closet. I wanted to still do this because, not to toot any horns here or anything, but I go to the bank, I go to the grocery store. I can't go a week without somebody bringing it up. Well, you should do cartoons, you should do books. And I'm just like, okay, where do I begin? So one of these days I'm working my day job, and my now wife finds we get a course catalog in the mail from the local community college, and they said, "Here's a class, Intro to Voiceover." And I'm like, well, we should look into this as kind of a goof. And I took the class, and they kind of vet you. They, decide whether or not you'd be a good fit. How do you sound? How well do you read out loud? Which is a thing. People can be really insecure about reading out loud. And do you have a noticeable accent? Do you have any kind of impediment? They weed all of those things out, and then they decide, well, maybe you should actually look into this as a living. And so from there, you get a little bit of casual coaching. You look into the resources to practice, to get work, what kind of equipment you might need, and it just kind of all snowballs from there.
As somebody that does voiceover as much as you do, there's a lot of podcasters that I talk to who do this on the weekends as a hobby. They don't do this as much as you do. Is there any kind of tricks or things we can do to keep a healthy voice? We got to protect this tool that we have. This is your livelihood. You got to do something to protect those beautiful voice of yours. Is there anything that you do to stay healthy with your vocal cords and all of that?
Number one for me, don't smoke.
Yeah.
Sometimes that actually helps people. You develop a nice little rasp. I don't know how long that's going to last. I don't want to put my personal views out there or anything, but I haven't smoked a day in my life. And I try to protect the instrument, as pretentious as that sounds. Number two, don't overdo it. If you're part of a union, I think SAG-AFTRA, don't quote me on this because I'm not in that union, but they protect their talent by saying you cannot record for more than 4 hours at a time, because it really does get exhausting.
Yeah.
I used to have a 4-hour radio show, and sometimes by the end of it, if it really got animated, you're like, "Oh, it's time for the big cup of tea with the lemon and the honey," which really does work, by the way, folks. Grandma was right. So it's really just about resting, not overdoing it. not a lot of screaming outside of work hours, if that's something you have to do. And yeah, just kind of being mindful of it because there are muscles in your throat and you don't want to strain them.
So
Most people take that for granted and don't think about it.
so do we actually lose our voice, or are we damaging our voice in that moment where we get all raspy from screaming at a concert?
It's a little bit, I mean, yeah, it's kind of one and the same.
Okay.
Yeah, you're putting strain on those muscles.
Yeah.
I'm not a doctor.
Yeah.
I mean, I look at this casually, but and then they need to rest and recuperate just like after you lifted weights at the gym. So it's crazy. Singers go on periods of vocal rest,
Sure.
little mini vows of silence, and that's the body hopefully heals.
There you go. That's great. See, that's something I was always curious about. Now, the other thing is you help authors by voicing their books. This is fascinating to me because I don't understand how any of this works. You get a book through an author to read for someone.
Mm-hmm.
Do you read the entire book at first, like the whole thing through, or are you reading it live in the moment and you don't know the next word's going to be? Like, how do you prep? Like, what happens behind the scenes?
That really falls down to personal preference.
Okay.
What I've heard from other people in the industry is it's very much encouraged to read the entire book first, to get a sense and a feel of how many characters there are, what these characters are all about, et cetera, et cetera. Now, the busier you get, the harder that is to do because reading takes up precious, valuable time. I have a lot of fun doing it in the moment. I don't like to know what comes next. I find it kind of helps things to sound almost a little more organic if I found out 30 seconds ago this guy died or this character is the relative of that character. It's just fun for me to do it that way. And it can cause problems and pitfalls. So that's the magic of being able to record and go back and edit. But I have fun just living in the moment with the audiobooks.
Okay. And do you do all your own editing yourself, or are you doing this in studio?
It's all me. This is a one-man show.
Wow.
Editing takes, in my opinion, twice as much time, maybe sometimes three times as much time as actually voicing the different chapters and the different projects. Because microphones are an amazing tool, but they're very sensitive, and so are listeners. And it's not always awesome to have the gross little saliva noises and breaths and this, that, and the other, or, God forbid you mispronounced a word or the name of a city or a country. Google is your best friend, and so are the authors if you have any questions. But editing is so time consuming and it's very tedious. But no, I do it all on my own
Wow.
for now at least.
Wow. Yeah, because I'm on your website and you have a list of all your tools and your editing software. I see Audacity, which is what I'm using as well. That's awesome to see.
Oh, the best.
Yeah, it's great.
The best.
I'm recording in it right now. It's great. Yeah, I love how you have everything linked out here for us, so we know exactly what you're using. Talk us through your website as well, Chris. Like, take us there, and what can we find when we get there? I love the samples on your website. It's great.
Absolutely. Yeah, my website, www.christurek.com. Turek is a weird last name spelled Turek. That's my business website for Chris Turek voiceover. Got some demos here at the top underneath a lovely logo. Like to thank the fine folks at
There you go.
99designs.com for designing that for me.
Nice.
Yeah, I've got my commercial demo, narration demo, and a little local radio commercial for a station I used to work at in Western Idaho that I'm still in touch with for a local business.
Yes.
Underneath that. So the website's a constant work in progress. As those of you who have designed websites probably know, you're always changing things, moving and shaking. I've got to add a couple more links actually after we're done recording here today. Got a little tiny breakdown of kind of the software and hardware that I use. Some fun logos, a biography, and then some of the past works I've worked on. A lot of audiobooks that are available on Audible, iTunes, and Amazon, and some author testimonials. Very grateful to have people share such kind words and sentiments with me. And then finally, a little kind of text box to get a hold of me, which just routes directly into my business email. If anybody has any questions, concerns, compliments, insults, or, you'd like to work together, that would be ideal.
Awesome. So when you're voicing an audiobook, you talked about multiple characters, then you're doing all of the characters that are represented in the book?
Every single one of them. And
Wow.
that presents a lot of challenges. And in the coaching and the workshops that I've taken, people say that when you get into voice acting, the key word is acting. And you should definitely brush up on it, take classes, take courses, get training, because that's the hard part. Reading, which, we're taught from early childhood, that kind of falls into the secondary category. If your acting is lame, which I feel like it can be sometimes, then not hardly people are going to want to listen to you or hire you. So, yeah, act it out. And So a book that I most recently worked on had about, I'm going to say, a ballpark of 20 different characters.
Oh my
And
goodness.
they were diverse. We are talking people from different countries, people of different ages, people of different genders, gods, mythical beings. So you just have to kind of map it out. It helps to have a diagram, draw it out, say this person is like this, whatever, a little cheat sheet, because this is an audio business. No one's going to be able to see you cheating. And always, if the author is communicative, ask them, hey, what do you think about this for this character? What do you think about that for that character? And then hopefully they'll provide you with some feedback, some guidance. And in my opinion, if they don't, well, then no news is good news. And hopefully they like what you're doing.
Have you ever heard back from an author and they're like, wow, that voice was exactly what I was looking for? Or the opposite, they're like, I didn't even anticipate that, but I love it. I love the voice.
So far, I've had a very lucky track record with authors. No one has said, that sucks, redo it. So thank goodness for that. Now, they've said, well, I never have envisioned that person sounding that way. So that's a great new direction you've taken it in. And I've had others say, that is exactly what I'm going to say mind's ear. I don't know if anyone's ever said that.
No.
That's exactly what I had in my mind's ear. So thank you for that. Yeah. And I love it when they're nice. I love it when they're communicative, and we can get stuff done. It's just every day is different from the last.
Are you accepting new clients right now, Chris? Can somebody hire you?
Always accepting new clients. I'm never too busy to work with anybody.
Okay.
So if you need something, let me know. I'm happy to be here.
Do you do smaller projects, or are you only focused on audiobooks, big projects? I'm just trying to get a context of what you're available to do.
Not to sound desperate or anything, but I accept projects of any length. I've done an audiobook that lasted an hour. I've done some that are 10 hours. It doesn't matter to me. I love doing it, and I will make time and pour the love into any project of any length. And not just books, everything under the sun you need somebody with a microphone for.
Good, because we talked before we record that for my How to Podcast series family, I have podcasters reaching out to me constantly going, Dave, I'm trying to find a voiceover talent to do an intro and an outro for my podcast. I'm willing to spend money on this. I want to sound great, but I'm having a hard time finding people. And when I do find someone, it's not to my expectations. And I'm just looking for somebody quality because, again, I want a relationship with this talent into the future, not just a one and done. I want to be able to go back and say, hey, I've got a special or a season or something, and I'd love to get an update to my intro or outro and have a relationship with this person, not just hiring somebody on a website and you may never hear from them again. I want to build a relationship with people that I work with. So you're open to that as well for the How to Podcast community as well.
By all means. get on that website, shoot me a message. We can discuss anything you might want. I'm working on social media today, transforming things into a business page. I've got personal social media, but I need business social media, and I've really been dragging my feet because social media is exhausting, man. So building a new one from the ground up, I've just been procrastinating on, but that'll be another outlet to get a hold of me. It's another outlet to get a hold of other voice actors as well. You can go down the Instagram rabbit hole and find all kinds of people on there. There are specialized websites for voice talent, but this is where it starts to get really exhausting. Places like voices.com or voice123.com, you can sort through a buffet of people and have them all audition for your project. You might get 200 to 300 of them.
Wow.
And that is where the client starts to get their head spins.
Yeah.
I mean, they start to sound all alike when you hear 200 people read the same sentence or two or paragraph back to back to back. Some people get so intimidated by that they just cancel. And I don't know if sometimes the project never gets done. And man, it's exhausting for the talent on there to try and all compete for that same worm on the hook too. So it's a resource. You can check those sites out, but I'm a little jaded. I wouldn't recommend it. I like what you're describing here, relationships, organic face-to-face cultivation of just being able to say, hey, this guy did this favor for me 6 months ago. I can still contact him and have him in my pocket to do it again today if need be. So stuff like that.
So talking about building relationships and community through social media, all that's a lot of work. We chatted before we hit record that a podcast from you as the host I would be so captivated by what you would put out into the world because of, again, not knowing how to do what you do. And you're an expert in the room. You have connections, you have story, you have history. I would love to fall in love with a podcast that you would put out in the world. Again, bringing other voices on in the community, building relationships, bringing authors on, talking about how to turn this into a business for somebody, right? You've gone to school for this. Like you have a lot to offer that a lot of people, maybe they're young, they're in school, they don't know their path in life. And hearing your show would give them direction. And just learning from you, you could be a coach. You could coach people on how to do this. You could bring on other voice actors that are young and help them learn how to do this. There's so many opportunities where you could kind of expand this using your voice in a podcast setting to bring people into your world. And the beautiful thing is, it's like a digital resume beyond your website where I can listen to you. And as I listen to episode after episode, as a listener, I haven't met you yet, but you're in my ears and I feel a connection with you where when it comes time to work with you, you don't need to sell me on anything because you've given me so much value. I feel already connected to you. I'm ready to purchase and move ahead. I'm ready to hire you because you've given me so much. So there's no sales funnel in that moment because you've given me all this great value as a podcast host. So I was kind of challenging and asking the question of you is if a podcast was ever in your plans, because again, I'm super curious on how you do what you do. It might seem common to you, but it's extraordinary to me as a listener.
Mm-hmm.
So I find so much value in this that I would love to hear your show. So, we chatted before we hit record that you had a few questions around podcasting, but is there anything that we can kind of just chat about here near the end of our conversation that would kind of help give you some direction if that's the path you choose to go?
Yeah. So basically the big, vague question of getting started. Everybody knows you got to go and get your actual physical equipment. I would hope that would be just about step one, right? Getting yourself a microphone, an audio interface, and a good computer. Is there really anything else you need?
I would say almost before that would be your why. Like why
Okay.
why do you want to do this? Because Again, you already have the equipment, so you're ahead of most people, and you have the skills through Audacity. You have everything you need to do this. You can do this all as a team of one, so you're way ahead of the curve. Just so you know, but your why is the thing that's going to bring you back to the next episode and making the next recording. Knowing exactly why you're doing this and kind of like who you're doing it for. That's kind of the idea. Like, do you want to talk to fellow voiceover actors? Great. But why do you want to talk to them? Do you build your community? Okay, that's good. So we'll have guests on your show. Do you want to be a coach and you want to help people learn how to do what you do and be that teacher moment? You could coach people on your show. Now I can hire you, right? So there's little things like that. You could be on your show. You can make a simple little comment like, hey, everybody, this week I was working with one of my clients and I was coaching them on imposter syndrome. And who's ever going to listen to me as a voiceover actor? And here's some of the things I talked about. In that moment, what you just told me is that you're a coach and I can hire and work with you. You didn't even have to advertise anything. You just said I was working with one of my clients. So now I got my credit card. I'm ready to go. Let's go. Chris, I want to hire you because you just told me that you have clients. You can say, I do voiceover intros and outros for podcasters. Yeah. That's a huge gap in the market. And I don't hear anybody talking about this. So you could go on and do all that. And you could advertise your services to the podcast community just by telling people that you do it. So I know people who would hire you today if they knew you were out there, just like that. So having a podcast creates this digital resume so that I can hear your voice. You're technically auditioning for me when I press play, really.
Okay.
Right? In a sense, because now I'm listening to you going, I can hear Chris being the voice of my show. I could hear Chris being the voice of my commercial. I could hear Chris being the voice of my training program for my business. He could be the voice for my cartoon character that I'm working on. I hear you in my head going, Chris is the voice that I've been looking for. And had I not gone to Google and typed in your name or voiceover actors, or I get caught in this cycle of going through and weeding through all this information that it comes through a search, where I can just press play on your podcast that's got a really good title for your show that leads me to you. It's a great way to reach an audience.
It is. And I see them, and it's about taking that leap too. It's about saying, I'm going to take the time to do this. Risks be damned, and let's make it happen. That's, to me, that's like 60% of the battle, at least for me personally. So how do you kind of take the leap, Dave? How do you just decide one day you're going to do it?
Throw caution to the wind. And again, if you know your why, you know why you're doing this. So that'll help you to know who you're talking to, because you have a picture in your mind of the person you're talking to. Is it directed to voiceover actors? Is it directed to people who hire voiceover actors, or both? Right? So that's kind of really clear. Once you know who you're talking to and why you're talking to them, now it's just a matter of mapping out what you want to say. You could have a 5, 10, 15-minute episode. It doesn't have to be 45 minutes or 3 hours like Joe Rogan. It can be short. You can just do, and you can do once a week, once a month, once every 2 months. You can do whatever you want. There's no rules to this. And then as you have bandwidth and time in your calendar, you can increase it. You can decrease it. It works for you. You're the boss of everything. There's no one looking over your shoulder going, Chris, you got to make an episode. As you do this, you're going to it's going to help with your social media, because now you can tell people, find me on Instagram. Here's my handle. Come to my website. You can be your own commercial. So you advertise your services on your podcast. You give value. You talk about the audio industry. You talk about radio. You talk about all the things you learned in school. Translate that through your lens and your knowledge back to your audience. You have so much content today, and you haven't even really started. You could fill up a whole year with probably very little effort with all of the things you know and have done. So you have everything you need to do this.
And then would it be safe to say, especially when first starting out. I would hope you feel this way 10 years from now too, but do it for the love of the game, right? Do it because it's something, new to try or something that you enjoy and hopefully you're having fun doing it. Don't do it to, try to become an overnight sensation or to become a millionaire, but, do it for fun. Would you say that that's accurate or yeah?
Yeah. So I was mentioning to you before we hit record that through my How to Podcast series, I've been helping people start shows. So I got this email yesterday. This is what I'm talking about. This is what you can do, Chris. Okay. Her name is Monica. She just created a new podcast and she was listening to my show, learned how to do this and created her own podcast. Sent me a link to it so I could listen to it and I gave her feedback, right? Just to encourage her to continue doing it. She did a great job. I did a little mini episode of her show to spotlight her to my community and put it out there as a bonus episode. Just, hey, everybody, here's Monica's new show. Everyone go listen. Go support Monica as she launches her podcast. I'd love to do that for you as well. Her last statement in her email says, thank you for everything. You literally helped change my life.
Oh, that's profound,
right,
Dave. I mean, such a small gesture, but leads to such big results. So that's amazing.
Now you can have that same impact for your community. You'll be the one receiving that email, Chris. That's like, Chris, I didn't think I could do this. And now I just got my first book for Audible. I can't believe it. If it wasn't for you, I would never be here. So thank you. You'll be the one receiving those emails.
I'd be printing every single one and framing them and hanging them on the wall if it were up to me. But
so if I was in your seat, Chris, and I'm not, because you have this amazing voice that I'm really jealous of. If I was in your seat and I was going to focus my attention on social media today or building a podcast, I would build a podcast because social media is very transactional. It's like talking to a parade. When you go to like the Santa Claus parade or a fall parade and these people are going by, you're stationary and the parade's moving by you, you're kind of talking to a passing audience on social media. And only a small percentage of your audience is actually going to see what you post. Compare that to being a voiceover actor, having a podcast, and knowing that there's someone press play on your podcast and they live in Africa. They live in India. They're in Poland. These are all actual people I've spoken to because of my podcast. And putting my voice out there, there's no boundaries. There's no borders. People can listen to it anytime they want. It's on demand. People can listen to an episode I recorded 4 years ago and press play today and get value out of it. So you know all about having audio legacy and using your voice to build a business. It seems very natural to me as a casual observer of what you do that you could easily transition into a podcast space and let it serve you as a digital resume that highlights what you do. You simply talking on the mic, again, is a vocal audition for me that makes me want to pick you because you're going to stand out in a sea of those 200 people on all those other sites where I'm going to get flooded and inundated by all these different voice actors. I have your show, which will become my favorite show, which I will listen to every single episode of and be a fan of and follow and support you to the point that when I am ready to hire someone, I don't need to go find anybody. I already found you because I've already feel connected to you. And that's a different connection than you're going to get on social media. I would say social media is a great way to combine that with a podcast or combine that with your website. But I wouldn't put all of my focus on just one thing, social media, but let it balance out all the other things you're doing, including using your voice on a podcast.
Well, I hope one day you'll be a guest on mine. And, I hope we can grow it into a big, beautiful thing. I liked your analogy about social media being a parade. And it's like a parade where everybody in the parade is marching in a different direction.
Yeah.
And I'm going to sound like a cranky old guy. I hope it's a passing fad one day. And it might be cool to go back outside. Let's not get on that tangent. But this is just, before today, I've considered podcasting, but never seriously. So I appreciate you kind of nudging me to take that risk and maybe go in that direction. So that's very, very interesting to think about,
Yeah.
Dave.
And even in the early stages of this is to be a guest, to be
Hmm.
a guest on podcasts, to come on and talk. Again, you can go on a podcast about podcasting and just talk about voiceover acting in intros and outros. There's a huge gap in the market where people are searching for you and they don't know how to find you. So you just being a guest on shows to talk about voice acting in the podcasting space as an expert on voice acting, you can help
Hmm.
podcasters who have very little knowledge. We haven't gone to school for this. You're at a different level than we are. So you're the expert in the room. I'm here to learn from you as a guest on my show. So using Podmatch, we talked about, that's one website you can try. You can sign up
Yeah.
there on Podmatch and put yourself out there, get on shows, and then build your community as a guest as you're contemplating starting your own show. Just get used to being a guest. You're doing it right now. So
Yeah. This is my first one, by the way.
come on.
First ever. Yeah.
See? Right? So
So it's an honor.
that's another way to dip your foot in the pool and get used to being a guest and doing that, building up your credibility, building up your voice. People get to know you and they're like, hang on, everyone. So I want you to know, Chris, the moment somebody emails me and says, Dave, I'm looking for a voiceover artist to be whatever for me, you're the first one. I'm going to be sending people to you. Okay. So
God
you've
bless
already
you.
got that in place just by this connection alone. And I do represent a large group of people that are looking for you. So I can fill up your calendar with some really amazing people who would love to work with you. So I'm
Well,
just saying
that's incredible.
you have a great opportunity in front of you. So I just want to encourage you to keep moving forward. Do it at your own pace, what feels comfortable to you. But if I can be a resource for you in the future, I would love to be there in your back corner, in your back pocket to, if you have a question, let me know. I'd love to help you.
I'm touched. Thank you. I'm beyond grateful. Uh, and I mean, even just meeting you to begin with kind of was sheer happenstance. So that's maybe 1% of the equation. So I mean, I'm so grateful, Dave. I can't express that enough. Um, and before I start rambling, I'm just gonna cap it off there.
Okay, one of the things I'm doing on my How to Podcast series is I have a question of the month that I pose to
Mhm.
my audience, and they respond back to me. I have a thing on my website called SpeakPipe, where people can leave me a voice message for free. They click a button, they can record their message, and it comes to me in an email. I can download the message or I can listen to it. I can also respond with my voice back to them. We can have a conversation. And speakpipe.com is the website. So on my website, I ask people to answer the question of the month. And when they do the answer, they give me the name of your website, the name of your podcast, whatever you do. For you would be your voiceover acting and your website name, how to contact you. So kind of introduce yourself, introduce your website, and then answer the question of the month. Those are the three components to this. So the first two you got down pat, no problem. So I'm going to ask you to redo this for me, and I'm going to take this little clip and I'm going to take it to another spot and release it. So it'll be your name, your website, and then the answer to the question of the month, which simply is, how many podcast episodes do you listen to on average on a typical week? That's it. So for me, it would be, hi, this is Dave from the How to Podcast series, and I listen to about 3 episodes a week. That's it. That's it. Real simple, right? And then so people can
Yep.
connect with you. It's a way to advertise you. It's not really about the question or your answer. It's more about you and your website. That's why I'm
Sure.
asking the question. I want people to connect with you. So I'd love to
Yeah.
kind of at the end as we wrap up, if you can record this for us here in the moment, it'll be again your name, your website, and the answer to the question, how many podcast episodes do you listen to per week? You ready to go?
Okay. I am ready to go.
Okay, lights, camera, action. And Chris, you're on.
Hey, this is Chris Turek, voice actor. Check out my website, www.christurek.com, and I listen to 8 or 9 podcast episodes a week.
See, everyone, did you hear that? Hire Chris today. His website, and all the information will be in the show notes. Before we go, Chris, one last comment to the authors out there who are looking
Sure.
for a voiceover actor. They've met you now, so that's going to bring them into your world, which is great. Is there any tips that you're expecting from an author when they reach out to you that'll make this relationship really solid and a great working relationship? What are you looking for from an author when they reach out to you for the first time?
Oh my goodness. I would say really, for me, the more info, the better.
Okay.
Do not worry about pouring too much into an email or a message. Write me a book in the email. I mean, do whatever you got to do. But I like to know, what's your book called? How long has it been out? How many approximately hours do you think it'll take to do? Just give me info. Because I've had, I like being on a dating site. People they email you. They go, "Hi, my name's John," or whatever.
Yeah.
I have a book. Bye. And you're like, well, oh, now I got to pull teeth. So yeah, just don't be afraid to really go detailed. The more, the better. I like that.
I love it. Okay, everyone, all the information for Chris will be in the show notes as always. And we're going to release this episode over on the How to Podcast series. We're going to release this on Living the Next Chapter and share this with everyone. And if you have any questions around using Audacity, I'm sure Chris can answer those questions as well, because he does this all the time.
True.
If you're looking for a great voiceover actor for all of your projects, Chris is there for you. Please reach out to him and let him know you heard him here on the podcast. Chris, again, thank you so much for this. I hope we can talk many more times in the future.
David, thank you very much, and I guarantee it.
Excellent. All right, everybody, all information is always in the show notes. Again, thanks, Chris.
Thank you.
Hey, thanks for being here at the end of the podcast. This is just for you because you're still here. Thank you for your support for the podcast. Thank you for listening to the show, sharing it with other podcasters. Maybe somebody you know is thinking about starting a show. I would love for you to say, hey, wait. You should go check out the How to Podcast series. It's got everything you need. And Dave as well is included. You get one free Dave with the How to Podcast series. I'm included with it. So kind of a bundle thing you get. To that point, mentioning it in the podcast, definitely want to remind you here at the end, there's a link in the show notes. Starting it this summer, I'm working through this. It's a way for us, you and I, to have a conversation around podcasting. I want to help you. And I've been doing this for people who listen to the show now for almost 3 years. And I just haven't been promoting it as a thing. So I'm now promoting it as a thing. I want to spend time with you. I kind of would love to hear your voice. We're going to jump on Zoom together. We're going to talk about your podcast. You get time one-on-one with me, 30 minutes in my calendar, completely free, no strings attached. You don't have to buy a blender or a vacuum or none of that stuff. No. Just us. I just like to help you. And whether you're thinking about starting a show or you have a show, you want to grow your show, whatever it is, I'd love to meet you, talk about your struggles, your questions, work together. And I am eventually developing this into more of a coaching program for podcasters. But I'm starting with my best friends first, for free. So if you're interested, you listen to the show, and I appreciate you, link in the show notes. Let's get together and talk podcasting, okay? You and me, let's talk. Let's talk soon. See you. Thanks.